Let's see if this works. I think we're there. Yes. Okay. And we're live. All right, I'm just waiting for Erin to join in. Actually, I need these on now. I can see without them. Hi, and thanks for joining me. And you'll be joining with Erin shortly. That's square enough, I guess. My name is Barry Selby, and I am going to go into full introduction once I get Erin in here. Do you want to see if she joins here? So just waiting for a second. So bear with me. This is a dual broadcast, so rather than me just going jumping ahead, there we go. Erin, are you there? Can I get you in? I can't bring you on camera, at least not that way. Are you on your phone? Okay. I can't bring you on camera. How bizarre. If you're on your phone and you're on your personal page, it should say, I can invite you to join, but right now I can't. It says you can't bring you in, so I'm not sure if you're on your computer or on your phone. So, it's a good question. How do you join? If you're watching me from your phone, I believe it's in horizontal. It's on horizontal. It should be straightforward. So, this is an experiment. This is a public broadcast, so you should be able to see. You can see it, so you can get to me. Any thoughts? I love doing this stuff. It's spontaneous and creative, and we're seeing if it works. I'm going to do it this way. Let me see. Now that's inviting people to watch. Allow your viewers to request to join you as a guest in your broadcast. That's turned on. So yes, you can request. I believe, actually, Erin, if you can click and see, should be a button somewhere that says you can ask to join the broadcast. So let's see if you can do that. So bear with me, we're just getting this thing set up. So hang on as we get into this conversation. I'm just waiting for Erin to join me so we can do a dual broadcast as we planned. Soon, I hope. So let's see. So I see other people who I can add, but they're not. I'm looking for you, Erin. So can you? I'm not sure if you've come through another way. It's a question. It's an experiment, an exploration. We will get to this. And if you're watching this in the replay, just skip ahead so you see both of us side by side, because this is just the warm-up stage, and we'll get to that in a moment. Get to the actual talk in a moment. We're gonna have some fun with this. And I'm just waiting. This is an interesting place. I'm in a holding pattern. It's like, this is the preview of the show. We haven't started yet. Okay, I can see. Oh, there we go. That's it, I think. Is that how we do it? Invite. Add. There we go. All right. You should be coming in. Connecting. Yes, here we go. Yay!
Oh my God. That was crazy.
All right.
Hi.
So, hi. You can hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, hear you fine.
Great.
Just trying to get the position of the camera so our heads are about the same height.
Yes. Okay, I can sit back and I don't know, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello. How are you?
Good. How's Florida?
You know, it's actually been beautiful. It's been cold and Christmassy, and I mean, it's only been 72 hours, I think, since I got here, and
Okay.
yeah, it's been wonderful so far. So far, so good.
Yeah, LA's still frying hot at 80 degrees, and well, not so much smoke now because the fire's moved further away, but I still feel my allergies, from this previous smoke getting my eyes and ears in my nose too. So it's a little bit interesting. So
Oh, California. Real soon.
Yes, indeed. All right. So
I
shall
know.
we? Sorry.
Yeah.
Should we
I was
do
just going to
this?
say, every time I tell people that I'm, just come from San Diego, it's the first thing they say is, oh, the fires, how are the fires? And
Yep.
I'm like, I haven't tuned into the news in a while. Are they still going or are they done?
Right. No, I understand. All right. So let's do this, shall we? Formal introduction. So you want to go first? Introducing yourself, or like what you do, what you're about, type thing. If you want to do that.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Thanks for being here. I am a feminine empowerment coach. So I work with women to empower them in every way, to call forward the creativity, to tap into that vulnerable intuition, and to really find that connection again within themselves and among one another. So my specialty is really doing really deep work around creativity, around coming back to our power center, and around sisterhood. Really bringing helping the feminine rise in sisterhood. I found that is one of the most powerful ways to do that. So although I do work with men, I mostly work these days with women.
Love it. And my name's Barry Selby. I'm a best-selling author, speaker, and relationship attraction expert. Mostly working with women to attract healthy relationships, but also I'm a very passionate champion of the divine feminine, and at the same time inspiring men to be in the masculine to counterpoint, to correspond. So this broadcast is meant to inspire both men and women. Oops, as I knocked my microphone out of my ear. So that's what the conversation today is about. It's about, as we called it, the rise of the divine masculine and divine feminine, or divine feminine and divine masculine. So where shall we begin?
Oh, wow. This topic is so juicy. And I think it's perfect that, a man and a woman, the physical manifestation of masculine and feminine, are getting to come together on this call. But I think it's important to remember as we move into this conversation that we all, whether we're a male or a female, we have both qualities. We have the qualities of the feminine, the qualities of the masculine. And I think what you and I were talking about is how important it is to really come to know in a greater way what the shadow side can be, and then we could call it the sacred masculine, the sacred feminine, but we could also just call it the healthy masculine, the healthy feminine, the empowered masculine, the empowered feminine. So, why is this important? Why is it important for people to understand this? How does this impact our relationships? How does it impact our own personal journey? And therefore, how does it impact everything? Our work, our career, how we navigate through our lives, how we interact, how we communicate. Because relationship is everything, right? And so, yeah, this is a huge part of it.
So basically, we'll have this done in about 10 minutes flat.
Let's do it.
Right. Yeah, because I would agree with you definitely that the recognition is that masculine and feminine is a polarity, not a gender base. So being male or female doesn't necessarily mean, but it generally means masculine and feminine alignment. Although in gay relationships, even though the partners are of the same gender, they have the masculine and feminine polarity in that experience too, because it's the masculine and feminine polarity, like magnetic north and south poles polarity, creates the attraction and the chemistry of relationships. So sexual polarity is based on masculine and feminine. And generally speaking, in heterosexual relationships, that's embodied in the male and female partners, and in gay relationships in the same gender. The masculine and feminine also sometimes reverses. There are actually very strong relationships where there's a heterosexual couple, where the woman is generally more masculine, and the man is more generally feminine. So yeah, absolutely, it's not tied specifically to gender, but it generally is by alignment. Yeah. And we carry both.
Yeah, and totally. And I think that's so important. And I think when we can identify the difference between the feminine qualities and the masculine qualities, we will stop making people wrong. What I found to be true in intimate relationships a lot of the time is when we see a difference in our partner, we can see that they are stronger, they're intuitive, they're creative, and if we're more, if we're stronger in our masculine qualities, it's more direction, it's more grounded, it's more about, being the protector, it's sensible. It can look at the feminine and go, whoa, you're kind of a mess, you're kind of chaotic, and we can make each other wrong. Or she can, the feminine can kind of go, you're too boring or you're too whatever. But I think it's important to recognize the different qualities and to have a mutual respect and an honoring, for that, so that everything is allowed.
Yeah, honoring the differences. That's actually, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday and mentioning something I remember hearing Alison Armstrong speak about, who's one of my favorite teachers, who teaches the Queen's Code and Hero's Journey and stuff like that. And she says that one of women's biggest mistakes is thinking that men are just hairy women. Because she's under the understanding that women think that we men should think like women, should act like women, because women expect us to be the same as them. And it's not true. And vice versa. We have a bad habit as men of thinking women should not be so emotional and not be so illogical, because we think, people generally speaking should be logical and unemotional because what we men generally have been trained to be. And it's a missing piece. So having a distinct recognition that we are different and respecting and appreciating that is part of the challenge that we have to go through, and also part of the healing we've got to go through as well.
Yes, definitely. It's huge. And I know for me, I've experienced that, in intimate relationship, and that being one of the major issues, in my relationship. And looking back, I can see now that it was just like a misunderstanding, of what the masculine qualities are and the feminine, and how they both are so necessary. They're both so needed and so necessary. And we sort of balance each other out. And so if you have a deeper understanding of that, and also too, like, not only does that help you navigate through the tricky dynamics of an intimate partnership, but it helps you kind of know what you need to bring to the table in certain experiences, right? And like when it comes to business, or when you're creating something, you can look at like, okay, what's already here, and like, what do I need more of? Do I need more of the masculine? Do I need more of the feminine? And that helps me a lot too, to gauge, do I need to soften, or do I need to ground? Do I need to do more in my creativity, or do I need to make a decision right now? So I feel like that's another element of how this can really impact.
Absolutely. And that's also part of the qualification, is maybe to explain some of the qualities of both sides, because generally qualities do tend to find they align in the masculine and feminine energetic, again, that we both carry. So, for example, like as you said, like for me, I was talking about earlier with you about, not having a script or planning ahead for this talk. I like being in the flow and just having to go where it goes. That's actually a very feminine thing, even though I'm being driven by a very masculine heart. I know that I have a gift to be able to be spontaneous and in the flow, which is feminine energetics. Whereas for the masculine, it's like structure and framework and getting it done and planning everything out and do things. And frankly, even though I very much love being in the masculine embodiment and working that more and more since I discovered that's what I wasn't in before, I still find myself loving to be in this in the moment experience. And part of that is masculine too, because for us in the masculine, being grounded in a place that is timeless and presence, it is much in the moment. It's just that the fact that we also know when we want to know what's ahead, step by step by step, because masculine likes planning. The feminine is just like, let's go.
Totally. And in my younger years, excuse me, I was much more in my masculine. And I think we've seen that a lot with women. There was that really big pendulum swing where we all sort of just went so far into the masculine. And we'll get into more of like the shadow qualities and all of that. But, but a lot of that was the shadow qualities, like manipulative and sort of aggressive and threatened by power and wrong use of power and all of that. But that was me, control and stick to a schedule and discipline. And I mean, to the detriment, of my own health and my own well-being, right?
Right.
And then I had to learn how to soften. I had to learn how to connect to my intuition. I had to learn how to trust my intuition and to really connect to that deeper part of myself and to let that wisdom emerge. Right. And now I'm in this place now where I'm like, okay, and then I went all the way to that side. And now it's like, ooh, okay, how do I find the balance, between the two?
Yeah. And that's the thing as well. For most of us, in the Western world, in sort of the school system, it's designed for the masculine because it's very methodical and orderly and structured, which is really imprinting a masculine mindset into the kids. So boys and girls are going to pick up this masculine way of doing things. And so the feminine arts aren't really taught as much in school, except maybe in dance and ballet and yoga and things that are more movement-based. And so there is a definite bias in the way that we're raised that puts more of a masculine framing on everything. And yeah, that's true. There's something about our development. There was a piece I want to talk to that you said, and it just went straight by me. It'll come back.
Oh yeah. Well, it's as you're saying that, I remember I actually went through quite like an addiction, phase of really struggling with like just addictive behaviors. And really, like in hindsight, what I understand that to be was that there was a part of me that was deeply suppressed, deeply suppressed. Because growing up, most of us weren't nurtured, like that creative aspect, that intuitive aspect of us wasn't acknowledged. It wasn't seen as a form of intelligence. It wasn't nurtured and nourished. So It just kind of seemed, foo-foo or whatever, out there. And And that was the part of me that was screaming for expression, and it wasn't until I started blogging and writing and expressing that part of myself that I began to heal.
Yeah. And that is also true that it was funny, I was reading an article recently about this, about how men are insulted by being called sissies, by being wimpy, by being feminine, by being girly, that it's all about the fact that we have to toughen up. And there's a movie out about the masks we wear. It's really about how us men as boys are indoctrinated to sort of tough it out and become strong and not allow softness come through us. So we're both, I think, in a lot of ways, the boys and girls have had a challenge being able to be authentic growing up because we weren't necessarily honored in the way we wanted to be. And so I think a lot of what we can do in this conversation as well is start a conversation about the healing that can happen too.
Totally. Yeah, because really we were all conditioned and programmed to be inauthentic, to how we truly operate and who we truly are. I think in terms of healing and how the rise of the masculine and feminine are impacting our planet right now is that I know for women, there's a deep call, there's a deep sense of dissatisfaction, of exhaustion, of just depletion and malnourishment that people are experiencing, that women are experiencing. And I would love to hear your take on that as well. That I feel like, for me personally, when I started to tune in to how I could be a contribution in this way, I started to hear that I needed to start to speak to this and actually give a voice to this thing. Because I think even a lot of women, they're feeling it, but they actually don't even know totally, fully, that's actually coming up for them. And so I feel like there is a huge shift happening where we're learning to celebrate. So I was always afraid. I never wanted to seem like I was like a feminist or like any of that, because that to me doesn't resonate for me, because I'm all about the masculine as well. But how I see the feminine is if we can really embrace, and really own that power, within us, that we can actually be a catalyst as well, to help awaken the masculine and to sort of almost be the way showers, in a sense.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's one thing I want to speak to. I remember we did talk about that just a little bit earlier, about what happened in the 60s with the sexual revolution and the feminist movement. It really wasn't truly the birth of the goddess or the feminine energy. It was actually the rebellion in some ways of women against the way they've been treated for so many millennia before that. And what women did, though, is they went straight out into the world. Instead of like becoming free women being the feminine, they said, let's just do what the men did. They wanted their independence. They wanted to compete and battle against the masculine, or I should say the macho way the world was being run. And so women were basically cutting their hair and going to work, earning an income, buying a car, getting apartments, and having independence. But their femininity wasn't being expressed, wasn't being honored, wasn't being even shown. And so a lot of women, I think, through the 60s, 70s, and 80s had challenges with that. So even now, as we're getting into the new millennium, there's a definite yearning for a lot of women to really own and express, and to know they can trust their own feminine heart, because a lot of women have been raised not to believe they can trust it.
That's right. That's right. Because it's one thing to connect to your intuition and to hear it. It's another thing to trust it enough to follow through.
Yes.
And I think, when we think of feminine, we think of lipstick and high heels and, dresses and skirts, and we think of cooks, and we think of, baking, and we think of all these things. I mean, even still today, even though like we really know better, and, and all of those things can be a beautiful, wonderful part of being, in the feminine energy. I love all of those things. But really, the feminine energy, it's an actual legit power, in the body, a feeling of being so aligned and so empowered and so sure of yourself, and that's in my work with women, especially when we connect more to the womb space, and I really take them into that part of their body, and they connect, I'm going to say it on camera, to the yoni area as well. There's a lot of radiance, that untapped radiance, untapped power that they didn't even know that was there. And most women don't even think they need that until they start to go there, and then they realize, wow, now I'm starting to really understand what it means to be a woman,
Yes.
Because I don't think, and including myself, I don't think we've really ever totally understood what that means. Like, oh, I'm a woman, I grow up, I become a mother, I take care of the house, I'm a caretaker, and that's pretty much, all we've ever known.
And, there's so much in this. some of the qualities that I remember learning about through the studies the last 10 years I've done with the various masculine and feminine polarities is the simplest way of putting it is that everything that moves is feminine energy, because feminine energy is life itself, it's movement. So when women say they don't know how powerful they are, absolutely true. Most women don't realize that life itself is feminine. So when you tap into your feminine, you have the power of the world, the universe at your fingertips. The masculine, it's like some of the analogies that I learned over the years is that in some ways, again, we like structure and framework. That's the masculine energy. Women have this grace and flow that is unlimited. So, for example, one analogy is that the feminine is a river, is the river flowing through, and it could be a massive river. The masculine is the river banks. The river banks can provide the structure and containment, but the river can overflow the banks at any time. And the power of the feminine, which women have not been, and I think, to be honest, men have not told women because out of fear that if they told women the power women have, men would be so scared. Because the reality is the feminine energy in women is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, women have given birth to everybody on the planet. If that isn't power, what is? So the recognition of us is that we men in our masculine, and guys, I'm sorry to say this, but you need to hear it, is that we are here to serve the feminine. We are here to honor it and to bring a sense of protection combined with service to support the feminine expression on the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when a woman feels that safety and they feel that protection and they feel that deep honoring, and this is what I find in a lot of relationships that I don't see happening, and I don't think it's on purpose, right? It's just that we don't really totally understand how to operate, in intimate relationships, but that we really do crave and desire that deep honoring, feeling deeply honored and deeply cherished and deeply encouraged and deeply seen and deeply met, like on a deep soul level, and when your partner is able to do that, he does create that space and that container for you to be all of yourself and to, become something far greater than you could have ever been, without the partnership, and vice versa. And then I've always imagined, the feminine as like the muse, she's sort of the energy that can inspire,
Absolutely.
the creativity and inspire that next level of love and intimacy and connection, but also creativity, both in the relationship and, and individually as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a sense of, and I keep getting these flashes of sort of the fairy tale / medieval times, in the sense of having the warrior, the man who's the masculine warrior, who fights stronger because he feels his feminine partner in his heart. He feels her energy being so inspiring, lifting to him, that he can go further beyond than he could ever do on his own. The masculine is can be about questing and achieving goals and getting things done and having results. But there's an emptiness to it unless there's somebody to share it with, I think, for men in a lot of ways. So having a partner who inspires that in him, and then he brings that back to her as a presentation almost. It's kind of the sense of fulfillment in the full circle. And for the man, I think it's a sense of acknowledgement, which we always crave, to be acknowledged by a woman, by a feminine, because the feminine is such a powerful force that we negate, limit, and ignore, and then wonder why we regret it, like we don't get what we want. It's a ridiculous. There's this, the choice we make can change everything.
Yes. Well, and I think it goes both ways. And I think also with women, we haven't learned how to communicate what we need. And how can you communicate what you need when you don't know what it is that you need?
Right.
And I find that, the feminine energy is all about pleasure, and it's all about radiance, and it's all about sensuality, and so there are certain things that we need, in order to feed that pleasure and feed that, to nourish us, to truly nourish us. We need pleasure. But if we don't know what brings us pleasure, if we don't know what feeds our radiance, if we don't know what turns that feminine power on, then how are we going to create space for it? How are we going to create a practice around that? How are we going to ask for it? So then we just get mad at our partner because we're not feeling happy.
Right, and how do we know what to give you if you can't tell us either?
Exactly. And we think you should read our minds,
Yeah.
We just think like, you're not making me happy. And it's like, But he's going, I really want to make you happy because that makes me happy, but you've got to lovingly help me understand how to do that.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That is a big piece of the puzzle. And for us men, to be really blunt, we're simple beings. So if you just gave us like ABC, we could do it. We'd be happy we completed the goal. And then you'd be happy because you got what you wanted. How easy is that?
Seems so easy. Why is it not?
Right.
No, but I feel like, but that's why I love that we're having this conversation, because
Yeah.
it really can be so much more simple. But there has to be, I think, a genuine desire on both sides, a genuine curiosity about the other one, right? Like a genuine
Yes.
curiosity about, and because I dive into this a lot, like how does, a couple, a partnership keep that, how do you keep that spark alive? How do you keep that passion? How do you keep that connection, over time? A connection that grows, not just a spark that starts out and then it dies out over time. How do you do that? And, I don't know all the answer to that, but I do know that if both partners maintain a genuine curiosity and they actually genuinely are interested in learning about the masculine and the feminine and how they work together and what each one brings to the table, then, I mean, that's a good start. It's a good place to start.
Yeah. I would add to that a piece that I learned about like recharging the batteries. I mentioned earlier about how the masculine and feminine polarity is like north and south poles of a magnet. And like magnets, if you're a couple together and you stay together for a long time and you're in each other's face, you're just doing each other. Like if you're, for example, living together and working together, it can be very wearing over time where your uniqueness of each other becomes worn down and you become buddies. And so to recharge the batteries is also important to spend time apart. So for women to recharge the batteries in the feminine way, which could be going to
Yeah.
the spa, it could be getting a massage, it could be going out with her sisters and just being in feminine energy, can recharge your batteries back into your feminine. For men to go out hunting or to go camping or go out and do sports that are competitive with their brothers and other men can recharge his batteries back to being fully fueled as well. And so by both individuals going into their individual preferences to recharge their batteries, it brings back the polarity and the chemistry that brings them together. So with that and the curiosity, I think you have a really good formula for a healthy relationship.
Yeah, and as you're speaking, that's awesome. I loved everything you said, and it reminds me of, the word that comes up is codependency, and how we tend to be in these codependent relationships because it's sort of like there's a fear driving the bus, like there's a fear in the driver's seat of like, and I've been guilty of this, in the past of like I'm afraid to not be with my partner, like, just not wanting to create that space for yourself to nourish yourself in that way. And now that I've done so much work with women, I would never ever again let that be the case in a relationship for me. I
Mm-hmm.
know that as someone who's more in the feminine energy, I need time with my sisters. Like I need a
Yeah.
generous amount of time, right, with my sisters. And that, when I'm nourished in that way and when I'm connected to my own pleasure, it creates such a greater quality of experience when you're actually with your partner and feeling that sense of empowerment. Because I think a lot of times in relationships too, we can feel a sense of disempowerment. There's just like an overall, sense of disempowerment. I don't know if you've seen that at all,
Mm-hmm.
but I've seen that, and so yeah,
Oh, I've never experienced it
it's just,
myself.
I know. And it's like I really ask, like, what is that really about? And it's more like when you're not empowered as the individual, and for me that's nourishing the feminine power within me. And when I turn that on, when I
Right.
turn her on and I'm empowered, I can take space. I can have space. I don't need to be with my partner all the time because I'm fulfilled. I'm fulfilled. And then when
Right.
I'm with him, it's just that much better. It's just that much better.
In fact, that's probably the biggest qualifier to indicate the difference between codependence and interdependence. Because this is the work, and this is my book, and I've talked about this in my own work, and studied this when I was studying with some of my teachers. Is the codependent model that we were raised with, most of us were, because our parents lived it, was this model where we felt like we were incomplete and that our partner made us whole. And all these movie quotes, from "You Complete Me" to the love songs that "I Could Die Without You," all these different things, kept that message going. So we thought that if we didn't have a partner, we weren't whole. something wrong with us if we were single or solo. And in fact, a lot of people look at single people, particularly the matchmakers and other people like that, look at the single people going, if you're not in a relationship, there's something wrong with you. It's like, not true. It's being single where we get to really discover who we really are and do work ourselves. Yes, in partnership, you learn about each other and learn about yourselves as well. But if you bring a lesson in self-discovery, because you learn humility, first of all, about you knowing there's more to you than just the presentation you have. So it doesn't matter how perfect on the outside you are, you have to work through the stuff on the inside that's not perfect. So the codependent model is a framework where you can't live without each other, and it's not a romantic thing. That's a depleted thing. You're the one who makes me whole. And the worst thing about that is when I look at you to make me whole, I'm a victim of your choices, because I cannot be whole without you. And so anything you do affects my mood, which is how most relationships get messed up, because the partner thinks that the person thinks that their partner is the source of their happiness. And so, of course, if that person doesn't deliver on it, they get upset, which is ridiculous. Interdependence, which is the awakened or evolved, or the rise in a way of what the developed masculine and feminine is where we are both whole. And then what we bring, because we are unique and different, is we add to each other's relationship, add to each other's experience, and add to the greatness of the relationship, because relationships aren't 50-50, they're 100-100.
Absolutely. And that's where it's like both people have to be doing their work in order to stay in an empowered place as an individual. And it's like, I appreciate the work I have to do when I'm single and the work that I have to do when I'm in a relationship, because it's different. It's a different set of things I have to look at. And right now, currently being single, at 38 in our society, it's intense. It's totally intense, because there is that blanket conditioning of like, there is that general overall, even if people don't intellectually think that way, like it's just in our being of like, there's something wrong with that situation, So for me, I've really had to be kind of diving into that more and more and really digging into that. And I think the first step is, for myself, is staying in my own feminine truth and power, being a way shower, in that way, trusting the divine timing, of things. But I think one thing that would be really cool too, to talk about is, how the rise of the masculine and the feminine, like, how can that even impact the way that we approach our, business? And I think it's really interesting how we're seeing this whole Me Too thing. And, witnessing conversations happening on public television that aren't exactly what you and I are talking about right now, but there's a greater acknowledgement of the voice of the feminine, right now. There's a greater acknowledgement of the fact that there is a shift that needs to happen, and there is a certain responsibility that we all need to take, right? On both sides.
Yes.
Yes. Shifting more away from that shadow that's just been okay for so long, and stepping into something different, and nobody really exactly knows what that is yet, but we all know it's happening.
Yeah. And the thing, I suppose it's not to excuse the perpetrators, but I did have this understanding that hit me a couple of weeks ago, that for those who are in control, in power, there's a need for them to feel valued, because the problem is what I realize a lot of people have, because again, the people who are not developed, who are basically being in a power position, but not actually authentically powered by themselves, is that they're still needing to find approval. They're still needing to find acceptance. They're still needing to be liked by people. And so for some of them, their method of asking for being accepted, for being approved of, is very convoluted. And so people who are in power often don't know. It's like they lose their bearings on who they are. And so they don't know necessarily how to be appropriate or respectful, or even how to know what to ask for the right way. Now, I'm not to excuse that. That's just the way it can be. The opportunity is, I definitely think, it's for more women to be in roles of responsibility and authority, because that will create more balance and equality, and ideally some preemptive conversations that don't go down that path into the challenges that we have right now. Part of the Me Too challenge as well is that the society we've been in for the last millennia is a male-centric society, obviously. And so women have been coming off second best all the way through and been treated like second-class citizens. So men think, who haven't woken up, men think that they can do whatever they want, which they've proven doesn't work now. But in the past, they got away with it because women didn't know, one, they had the voice, and two, they had the power to step up and speak from firmness and truth that was freeing them to be whole, and also brought the other people into accountability, if that's one way of putting it.
Yeah. Yes.
Does that make sense? I'm not sure if it's making sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I'm hearing too is that everybody is responsible. You know, we all play a role. We all have to take radical responsibility for this really necessary shift. And I know there are multiple ways that we can do that. And there are multiple ways that can look like, what that can look like. I know for in my work with women, what I'm finding is that when women gather and they come together and they reconnect to their power center and they reconnect to, it's actually quite a magical place of truth, and it's all inclusive, you know, and it's a loving respect for all of life, you know, that starts to move through their being. And when they do that, it's like their whole entire perspective, perception, their posture, the way they communicate shifts. It totally changes. And so it's less about, I mean, yes, there comes a time and a place where we've got to take action. We've got to speak up. We've got to speak our truth, and we've got to say something. And a large part of this is so much of this inside job too, of like, you know, for those of you who might feel like, how can I, you know, contribute to in this way? It's like, just connect to that within yourself, you know, finding, you know, that, and me too, like even been recognizing like where is the shadow masculine within me? Where is the wounded feminine? And, you know, the wounded feminine feels disempowered. She kind of has wounds of rejection and abandonment and not feeling good enough. And I know for me, for such a long time, I operated from that place. And also the wounded masculine of, you know, threatened by power, wrong use of power, you know, feeling inadequate, you know, just tearing down, you know, things that threatened me or whatever. These are ways that I would operate throughout my teens without really knowing it, you know, and now having a greater understanding of both, you know, that masculine power of protection and guidance and direction and action. And now you know what to call forward from yourself. You also know what to call forward from your relationships, you know, and you know what tools and what elements and energies to be working with, you know, in your business, you know, and how you're moving forward and creating and, you know, serving, you know, the world.
Right. Okay, so you gave me a few things to play with there.
I know, I said a lot.
We do that. We do like go off on a tangent and come back. So a couple of things I want to speak to. One is from the point of view of the wounded masculine, or the undeveloped, or the awake, or the asleep masculine, or I should say even the undeveloped masculine, was really, I would say, the word I use to describe mostly is macho. It was a machismo-based, ego-based desire to survive by putting myself ahead of everybody else, to try and win no matter what cost. And it was kind of my way or the highway. The developed masculine, or the awakened masculine, is more about service and about a legacy or giving something bigger than himself to the world. The undeveloped is the one that is about self-interest, self-centric, which is where most of the mistreatment of feminine comes from, is that selfishness act. The other part of the undeveloped masculine, which I was living in for a long time, is because I was so averse and so unwilling to take on the macho, like run the show, because I got bullied at school. I was definitely repressed from that. What I got...
I'm just getting my charger. Don't mind me.
That's okay. Mine's been plugged in from the start. I know. And thanks for explaining. For me, though, especially when I was younger, my way of being in the world was to be more like a people pleaser. So even though I was in the masculine, undeveloped masculine, I was more the nice guy, being subservient, almost being a what's what I'm looking for? Like a secondary. I wouldn't take charge and run the show like other boys would, because I wasn't macho enough to do that. But women were doing it more than I was. So there was a definite confusion at that age about what to be about in one of my growing years. I didn't understand what the masculine was at that point, developed or undeveloped. So for both us as boys and girls growing up, we have some challenging models to work with, as in things that don't serve us. But also we have opportunities to heal those histories for ourselves, to embody our full, develop masculine, develop feminine. And the one thing, second thing to speak to is about business, because you mentioned business in passing, but we want to get to that one at some point too, is the business world has not been designed for the feminine energy yet. Or I should say, the feminine energy has not found a way to use the business world in a feminine way yet. It's been structured for the way men do business. So that's why a lot of my clients are female entrepreneurs, women in business, who are dynamic, getting things done, and they're ruining their love life because they're in the masculine, because that's the way the world has made them conform to do business. So when it comes to relationships, they treat their partners the same way, and it doesn't work because then it's two masculine energies backing against each other. And so there's a definite shift in the world that I think needs to happen for the business world, and probably for politics too, because since the feminine energy is about collaboration and cooperation and bringing together versus separating, the feminine energetic is needed in every area of business and of corporate and of political leadership too. So there's a shift that we're seeing, and so this conversation is ideally contributing to that future prospect.
Yeah, and I'm finding that to find that balance between the feminine and the masculine in business. It's interesting because you were sharing about just like that need to prove something, that wounded masculine is kind of or sort of people in power that we're seeing right now anyway, hurt people, right? And there's still that need to prove something, and we see that right now with the people in power. And I had that, that was something that I dealt with a lot, and I would see that show up in my business. I that need to feel validated or to prove something, to receive back, somebody's approval. And then letting go of that has been really interesting. And so now it's like really finding a balance, between, and the word that comes up is authenticity. And I was actually at a party last night, and we were talking about just gender in general, and how I feel like we're in this place where we have an opportunity to really drop the whole gender thing. I mean, to just completely drop it. Like in the way that we currently understand it, so that everybody can find their authentic, unique expression. You don't have to be a boy and you don't have to be a girl, right? You get to just be you, right? Whatever that is. Because I think we have this way of really editing ourselves. Like even those of us that have done so much deep work, I find myself still doing it. And it's kind of hilarious. It's like, really? Like, you're still trying to fit yourself into a box? Like, aren't you done with that? How do we learn that doesn't work? What are you doing? But it's like the programming is so deep, you should be like this, or you should be like that. This is what boys do. This is what girls do. This is what successful is. This is what smart is. We only really value a certain kind of intelligence in our society, really. And there isn't really room for everyone's zone of genius. Everyone has their own zone of genius, right? Yeah. But we're so busy trying to fit into the zone of genius that our society validates that we don't really just hone our own, like, cultivate our own and really stand strong in that. So I feel like that whole masculine and feminine really plays a role in that, because we're so busy trying to be what we're supposed to be that it's like, just be what you are. Let's just be what we are and stop trying to be what we're supposed to be.
That, yes. So much of that. And also for me, I'm recognizing more and more that it's okay to be our unique selves, which is what you're saying, that we've been trained and educated, informed, and shown that there's only two ways of being in the world. Whereas in fact, there's so many more choices. And this is not my area of expertise, which is basically the multiple what do they call them? The non-dual type individuals who choose not to align to masculine or feminine, or to boy and girl, or male and female. And so this is outside my frame of reference, but I do understand that there's a recognition that we all have an opportunity, and certainly I think a requirement, to step into a place of honoring the differences. It's the first step for a lot of us to recognize and honor the difference between the masculine and the feminine, and male and female, because a lot of us haven't done that forever. So to understand and own our part in that, and so on the opposite, is great. And then the nuances of the different layers and facets and aspects within that of those people because, like you were saying before, and we both said earlier about how we have both masculine and feminine energy within us. The thing is that being 100% person, we have a percentage of masculine and a percentage of feminine that makes up the 100%. So if we are someone who's 90% masculine and 10% feminine, we're different from somebody who's 80% feminine and 20% masculine. There's the different radiance. So there are different percentages of polarity. If someone is 50-50, they're generally pretty much asexual energetically because they're not pulled either way. So it doesn't matter if they're in a male body or a female body, they're choosing to be pretty much asexual. So there's a variety of points on the spectrum of what a person can choose to be that isn't necessarily one or the other. And so it is honoring the differences and uniqueness. And back to the relationship conversation as well, our truest relationship partnership usually happens with someone who's the opposite polarity, reciprocal. So someone's 80-20, we'll find someone who's 20-80 will be a good match. Whereas, so it's finding that harmony where you both match and the right level of percentages in a way. It sounds like mathematics, but it's reality of what the attraction is based on.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is I actually had that, in my last relationship could have actually just gone, it was perfect really. But if there's not a deep honoring and a mutual respect and a mutual level of curiosity on both person's side to honor and respect the other and to learn from the other, then it, even when you have that, it's unfortunate, it won't work. Gosh, there was just something that was coming up as you were talking. What was it? Where did it go? Oh man, I can't remember. I'm sure it will come back. So much good stuff though. Yeah.
Right. Actually, let's go to the honoring piece for a moment because you mentioned that. That's one of the biggest pieces too, is yes, to appreciate and know the differences, but to truly honor the differences. So as you said in your relationship about having honor as well as the curiosity on both sides, there is something that I think we've tripped over the years, is because we have assumed that the other person should be like us. So like, as Alison Armstrong said about how women think that men should be are basically just hairy women. Women didn't always appreciate, honor, and respect men for being men because they were different from being women, and vice versa. Yeah. Especially, men haven't necessarily honored and respected women. Well, based on results in the media, that's definitely true. Because women are not like men. How you act, how you respond. And this is not about masculine and feminine as much as it's about gender differences, and respecting the fact that what women are, what they bring, who they are, is absolutely different from the way men are and what they bring. And that's okay. In fact, that's to be honored and respected because it's different. And there's something in our culture that's made it where difference is not respected, it's been hated. That's been true about race, about culture, about religion, about any of these things. So why would gender be any different? But it is time to change that.
Yes, and that reminds me what I was going to say, actually. Perfect segue. So, I was thinking about when we were in school, and I remember when I was going through my 20s and having a little bit of a rough time, I remember being really frustrated about something, and I would say, when we go through school and they don't really ask you what you think or what you feel, they tell you what to think and what to feel. And for the most part, every now and then you get that wonderful teacher who values what you think and what you feel, but it was rare for me anyway. And it just seemed like I was aware that like I had been conditioned and that there was never really a space that was created to nurture and nourish my intuition, to nurture and nourish my creativity, my authentic creativity. Like, sure, they put you in art class and they tell you to make a piece of pottery or they tell you to paint a picture or whatever, and that's great. It's better than not having it. But there was no space that really nourished or nurtured these qualities. What was nourished and nurtured was very surface layer. Like as a man, the qualities that were valued were be strong, be tough, be the provider, all of those just don't show emotion. Those are the things that were nurtured around the masculine. And then with the feminine, it was like, be of service. Don't really have an opinion, don't, like intuition is don't honor intuition because that has no place, in the conversation. So it's just interesting that like, I feel like if we start to really nourish those more sacred, healthy qualities of what the masculine and the feminine energies really truly are. It gives us an example. It's like we don't really have any examples. I look around and I'm like, what are the examples out there of people who are living in this way? And we do have plenty of examples, but
Yeah,
not as mainstream, examples.
it's true. I just hit on a flashback, like two flashbacks came together at once. I remember at school, for boys, it was the one who got there first wins, the one that got the highest score wins. So there was a competitive nature that was implanted with us, and it's true with the girls too at school. They would get the best prize, they would get the best acknowledgement, they'd be the top of the class. And I remember in matriculating through the class I went through, when I was in the top three in my class, because back when I was at school, we had different grade levels, or not grade levels, different, like the highest class was the A class and the lowest class was the D class in the same year at school. So in the first year, I was in the B class, but because I was the top three, I got into the A class. And what happened was I was top three. It's like, yay, best kid in the class. Then moved up to the next class, and I was way down the lower part. And so it felt very disappointing.
Right.
So
Yes.
there's this whole thing about, being in a kind of way, being a big fish in a small pond, or being a small fish in a big pond. It's this reference point about how do we value ourselves. And part of the work is to take ourselves out of that context of comparison with other people, big lesson, to value who we are wherever we are and whoever we are, so we can honor and respect who we are all the time. Slightly different perspective for a second, because I'll come back to that point. I was at a workshop, this is years ago now, but I remember there was this point about, I'm not sure what, now I remember the concept of what the teaching was, but the principle is that we had to find a unique way of getting from A to B, and you couldn't copy the person who went before you. So every single person, there were like 10 people in a row, had to find a way to get from point A to point B in the room without copying somebody else. And they all did it differently. And there were probably 25, 30,000 other ways of doing it as well. And the recognition is that every single one of them got applause. Every single one of them got appreciated. Every single one of them owned a new way of doing it. The funny thing is the last person who went had figured out 10 different ways, because they saw 9 before them plus the 10th one they did. So in some ways,
Right.
not winning is the best experience to have. But coming back to the piece about self-approval, and this is a 4-day lecture right here, is really the understanding that who you are is not based upon who you're around. And who you are is not based upon where you've been, or your relationship partners in the past, or your rating amongst other people. Who you are is divine whole already. And talking about the rise of the divine feminine, rise of the divine masculine, that divinity that's within each of us is, first of all, it is all of us the same, or I should say the same in all of us, independent of the shell we wear or the polarity we wear. So we're all deserving, worthy, and whole. So get that first. The second part is that the joy of being in a physical body and the joy of having a polarity gives us a chance to play with a unique way of being that we can honor, express, and celebrate. And there's nothing to compare to. And when you get that, it changes everything.
Mm-hmm. It does. I know. It's such a big one too, this whole thing. And I'll kind of just wrap up with this is even just being home for the holidays. I'm staying with my parents, and I love my family. They're wonderful. And I was blessed, with a wonderful family. And, I'm aware that sort of where I grew up and the family I grew up in, that there, tends to be a certain perception about what success is, a certain perception around, what people should do by a certain time, and, all of that. And I've navigated through that with them, and they've navigated through that with me, and we've learned a lot from each other, but it's still there, it's still there. And it just came up for me the other night, around success. And I love that you talked about that, because I just think it's really huge. And so many people are left to feel like they're a failure because they don't fit into this tiny little box that actually only a very small percentage of people even really fit into, and that there's only really a small percentage of people in the world that operate in this way that we validate as being intelligent, successful, worthy. And so and that's dangerous, and we have so much depression and mental illness and anxiety and all of these things, in our society. And you have to wonder what's really going on there, and
Yeah.
so I love that you brought that up because it's so important. And I feel like really this conversation is really about authenticity. And when we are able
Yes.
to, when we have a greater understanding about what that divinity is, what that sacredness is, within all of us. And when that is nourished, when we nurture that,
Mm-hmm.
when we nurture what's true and what's authentic for us, when we make feeling empowered a priority, like whatever it takes, right, to feel empowered. And empowered is different. It's different than, feeling in control or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Empowered is like a sense of deep power within one's being. Yeah, then it's like it starts to really create a big major shift. And those of us who are kind of onto this already, I just kudos, because to hold the torch and to hold the space for it, when there's still that conversation that can potentially make you feel like you're not totally succeeding because it's
Mm-hmm.
still not totally acknowledged or validated, is, it's big work to do, and so
Yeah.
I just want to like acknowledge anyone and everyone who's doing the work, and focusing on themselves and cultivating that within themselves, because we need more people doing that.
In fact, I would say I dedicate our talk today to those people.
To those people, absolutely. Me too.
Yeah, because we're in it. We're both in it too. So we're in this journey, and so to acknowledge those people who are also doing this work and stepping out and being the bold way showers for everybody else in whatever way, shape, or form that is. It's a huge step and a huge destiny that we're all fulfilling. So it's wonderful.
It is. And it's scary, when I got the call to start working with women, yeah, it was just like, wow, really? Okay. But I mean, it's like, because I knew that it was time to lead in a bigger way, and I think you're probably feeling that too. I think a lot of us are feeling that. And so yeah, just celebrating everyone who's listening to that and following through.
Yeah, for me, that's the same. That's a similar thing, but different, because being a man who's not so much leading but inspiring women, there's been this question in mind, like, why am I doing this? And it's so clear inside of me. It's like, no, because so many women haven't heard from men that it's okay. They haven't had a man in their corner and haven't had a man stand beside them and say, yes, you deserve the best. That may be the biggest part of my work, even though I'm doing the other coaching, counseling, everything else I'm doing. That presence I bring, maybe the biggest gift I can bring to any woman. So I'm grateful to do the work.
I agree, because I feel like women, we all need healthy examples of the masculine, and we all need healthy examples of the feminine. And I think that, you're being that. You're being that for men and for women, and it's desperately needed. So I'm deeply grateful. It's for me, it's a gift to even be able to have this kind of conversation with a man. It's like, hallelujah, it's a great gift, and I deeply appreciate it. And thank you, Tom. You're very sweet. My friend Tom chimed in.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I guess we're getting different comments, and I have to look at the replay after to see who'd commented. So okay. So I guess we're coming to the end of this particular talk.
I feel like we could keep going forever, but I actually have to hop off. I don't want to, though. I want to keep going, but yeah, I gotta get going.
So this is part 1, or episode 1. There'll be more to come.
Yes, part 1. I like that. Part 2 on it. Cool. Stay tuned. Part 2 is coming.
Yes. So first of all, I'd say thank you, Erin, for joining me. Thanks for this. Thanks for inspiring this conversation. It's been wonderful to have. The second thing is, for those people watching who have been watching, thank you for your comments. I guess we only see half the comments based on whose screen you were on. But if you have any comments, questions, please put them below. Yeah. And also, if you know anybody should watch this, please share it out with people. This may be the piece that some people need to hear to be awakened, to be inspired, to be challenged. And we'd love to get this message out further to more people. So thanks for watching. Always. Thanks for watching and following us.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, everyone. And if you're watching this later, we'd love to hear what you have to say and just contribute, to the conversation. So, and thank you, Barry.
All right. My pleasure. I'm glad we did this.
All
We'll do it
right.
again. All right.
Yes,
So see everybody
absolutely.
later. We'll be back again with
Okay.
more content soon. All right. Bye.